a realistic plan to address the economic factors to keep high-quality jobs while we transition to a clean tech economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And while that question was addressed to Michelle, I think I'm going to give the other candidates an opportunity to weigh in on the Trans Mountain Pipeline, so we'll take it away with Kyle.
Well, my answer is going to be remarkably similar to Michelle's, and I agree. We do have a carbon-based economy at this time, and we do have a need for oil and gas. So I think the decision to allow the Trans Mountain Pipeline to go ahead, the decision to expand it is going to be good for Canadian jobs, it's going to be good for workers out in Alberta, and it's going to be good for the economy. We have to find a way to marry those two concepts together. Keep the economy moving and green the economy. One of the things that we talk about in the Conservative Party is, and I said it earlier, is a sector-by-sector approach, a regulatory approach. So we want to regulate big emitters like pipelines and oil sands developments to lower their carbon emissions. And that's the way we're going to try and marry those two concepts together. And also investments in green technology that are going to help us reduce greenhouse gases in other sectors. So I'm in favor of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, in favor of its expansion.
Stefan, if you would like to comment.
You bet. Absolute hard no. Trudeau was at a turning point in being Prime Minister. Do I buy this pipeline? He had to. It was the right decision because Kinder Morgan had all the assurances that the project would go forward. Kinder Morgan, the private potential operator of that pipeline, had all the rights to build it. They thought, the government thought, and then it was right. Otherwise, they would have sued the Canadian government, and that would not have been healthy. Trudeau made the right decision. And now the real right decision would have been, dear taxpayer, we made a mistake. We sunk $4.5 billion. Let's move on. That's the way he should have done it. I can explain how a pipeline works to an 8-year-old. You know, we dig for oil, it's very bad because it emits 8 times more CO2 when we dig for oil than what the Saudi Arabians would do it. We put it in a pipeline, we ship it on a boat, that boat might collide in the harbor of Vancouver, whatever happens, but the boat goes to China, they make a big fire and they burn our oil and then we have more CO2. The Greens don't want to shut down the oil sands operation, the bitumen production. The Greens want to keep it at level field, not to increase it, and then slowly phase it out, but no increase in oil production.
Thank you very much for that. The debate pipeline now moves to Allison, if you'd like to comment.
Okay, thank you for the question. So let me just put out a disclaimer out there. This is my personal views. This is not the NDP's views. I can't reconcile purchasing of the pipeline because of the climate crisis, as well as the lack of consultation with Indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And we'll continue with Chad. I'm sure he'll have something to say about this.
So my party does support the pipeline. That doesn't mean I do. From doing my research on renewable energy, I did find that whenever the renewable energy is not creating energy, it's going to be reliant on fossil fuels to make sure that everyone does get their energy. There's something out there called the Canapuck. It was actually developed by CN Rail. It allows the transport of fossil fuels through an already existing rail line. It actually floats if it gets dumped into the ocean, reducing the environmental impact as we switch over to cleaner energy. What I'm looking to do is use the already existing infrastructure to transfer the fossil fuels that we need to use until such time that we don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chad. Now, the next random question that I have from the audience looks like it's directed to you, Kyle, so we're going to start with you. The Harper government removed protection from some of 3,000 Canadian lakes. How is that an indication of the Conservatives' intent to protect our lakes and water?
Well, I'm going to disagree with the premise of the question, first of all. We did a review of the Act that govern navigable waters. We made some changes to those through regulations. We didn't remove all protections from waterways and lakes. And as we talked about right now in earlier, we do have a plan that we want to do to protect our waterways. I talked about it. For example, we want to continue the Lake Simcoe cleanup. That's one way that we're going to protect our waters. We want to protect our wetlands. And we also want to improve and maintain watershed protection. Making changes to regulations and in different ways doesn't mean you've removed all protections. It means that you've made changes, which we did with respect to certain regulations under the Beds of Navigable Waters Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think that we'll again proceed to, on the subject of the protection of our lakes and waters now with you, Stefan, if you care to comment.
Yeah, we touched on it before during the other question time. I don't have a new answer for you. I would think for the sake of time, let's pass it on and move on to some question that's a little bit more spicy.
Alison, is that question spicy enough for you?
It's very spicy, I'll take it. I'll
Okay.
take it. So our Canada's freshwater resources are critical for the health and well-being of our ecosystems, our communities, and our local economies. Our government will implement a national freshwater strategy and work with the province and territories to protect our waterways under international agreements. We will also reverse the harmful changes that have been previously brought on. We'll fully restore navigable water protection for all our Canadian lakes and rivers and invest in research to support freshwater protections.
Thank you. Chad, you can comment.
I'd like to give you a promise that I can keep, and that promise that I'm going to keep is protecting Dufferin Caledon's waterways. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle, would you like to weigh in on the protection of waterways and water?
I echo what has been said, and I've already spoken about what the Liberals have been doing to protect freshwater lakes, and especially our Great Lakes.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I have a question here now that's for all of the candidates. And this time we'll start with the Green Party and Stefan. How do you and your party intend to support food security for all while helping farmers steward their lands in ways that sequester carbon?
Yeah, certainly that's the big balance here, right? Food security. I also see it on a global level. There's so much controversy about many things. For instance, if you look at, as an example, GMO, genetic modification, is that still good when it comes to food security? It can do wonders, let's say, in countries like Bangladesh, for instance, which will have way more flooding and way more jeopardy for their rice harvest. So there is hybrids of rice available that can endure the weather that will come upon us thanks to climate change. So we really have to balance these things out. On the local level, we already touched on it a little bit. We want to go back to farming practices that are safer for people, safer for the environment, and actually safer for farmers, not handling these pesticides and unnatural substances. So that will give us the food security we need, and I believe that the plan of the Green Party that really here also brings all hands on decks will help us to make progress on that.
Thank you, Stefan. And now, Alison, would you care to comment on stewardship of land, sequestering carbon, and food security?
Thanks, Ray, and this is a pretty spicy one, so I'll take it. The way we grow crops, raise livestock, and use food also has an impact on our climate future and nutrition for all Canadians. We'll work to connect communities to farmers through local food hubs and develop a national food waste strategy to reduce huge amounts of food that currently go to waste in Canada. Our government will also partner with farmers and communities to support biodiversity and to monitor and protect pollinator health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. And Chad, on the table now is food security, stewardship of land, and sequestering carbon.
So with the PPC's policy on reducing the farm tax down to 10%, I'd like to see more farmers come around. We need to, in order to do that, we need to expand on the mentorship for farmers. Some of our farms are dying out just because there's not somebody to take over the land. There's nobody farming them. If you go down my street in East Gary, I see fields upon fields that sit empty with nobody growing any crops because there is no farmer to work them. I do think some incentives to allow people to get into agricultural businesses would be a big benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle?
I was on the Dufferin farm tour last weekend. Did anyone else go on that? Yeah, it was pretty excellent, wasn't it? And one of the first stops was a cow farm, a dairy farm, that was extremely high-tech, very large. The last one was a small regenerative farm, Ombre, you probably have heard of it. And yeah, I bought a lot of stuff from his little farm store, and I'm healthier for it this week. Eating on the campaign trail, not always a healthy thing. And Jamie was telling me that he was at Dufferin Federation of Agriculture meeting, and he was speaking to the farmers about having a meeting between regenerative farmers and mainstream farmers so that he can exchange ideas on what to do in the face of a climate-changed world. As you know, farmers are continuously dealing with flooding, with drought in these years. That's probably not going to get better. And I think the more cross-fertilization we can have between different kinds of farms, the better it's going to be for all of us. Food security is an issue, obviously, that is going to affect us all, especially in the coming years, and especially if climate change isn't mitigated in the way that we hope. And I think that we need to work very closely with our farmers. I know that the Liberals are looking at a few different things, but we need to work closely with our farmers to make sure that we have the food available and the fresh water to feed us.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Well, finally, we're talking about stewardship of the land and carbon capture and, well, helping food security. Can you comment?
Absolutely. I had the opportunity to go to a board meeting with the Dufferin Federation of Agriculture and sit and talk to them about the challenges that they face. They are fantastic stewards of our environment, especially here in Dufferin-Caledon. They're very concerned about their land. They're very concerned about the quality of the food that they produce. One of the things that we talked about is the 4R Nutrient Stewardship Program, and it's a great program that has been implemented, where you want to have the right source, the right rate, the right time, and the right place for using nutrients to grow your crops. We also want to make sure it's okay for our farmers to preserve wetlands on their farms, because we know that wetlands are great for doing a number of things, including the fact that they capture carbon. Most importantly, we have to find ways to support our local family farms, because the family farm is in difficult straits. What's happening is when you try and pass the family farm down, they're facing crippling capital gains taxes on the sale. They're facing incredible amounts of money that they have to bring up front. And so often what's happening is we're losing our small family farms to large factory farms and corporations. One of the things I want to do if I go to Ottawa is to fight for ways to support our local family farms so they don't have to go through these transitions and lose their farms to big corporations. Because local farmers are the ones that are going to preserve the environment on their farms.
Thank you, Bob. We have another question from the floor, and this one is for all candidates, so we'll start again with Allison, and here's the question. We mentioned water. What about fresh water for the First Nation communities? These communities are drinking from water bottles. They do not deserve to have, do they not deserve to have access to fresh drinking water? What will your government do for these communities? Allison.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. Our First Nations communities do deserve to have the same rights, the same access to fresh water as all the other communities across the nation. We are committed to lifting the ban or lifting the inability for First Nations communities to drink water from the tap on their own in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad, you here to comment, please?
Yep. So on a side note, whenever it comes to family farms, zero capital gains tax with the PPC, just to make sure you guys understand. If you guys were able to see Maxime Bernier, unfortunately sometimes he's not in mainstream media, you will know that he's very, very passionate about this issue. It's one of the first things that he talks about why we're helping other countries and not helping our First Nations people. The PPC will be launching out, and you can see it on the website, their policy on First Nations. We're trying to give them property rights. Right now they can't even borrow money against their own homes. It's something that needs to be changed. It's time we bring them back into the fold and they get the rights that every Canadian deserves, and it starts with fresh drinking water. Thank you.